Boom shakalaka, ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, beautiful brothers and sisters around the world. It's your boy Krishool, aka the esoteric noetic, aka the chocolate Nubian soul brother from Ghana, West Africa. And I came across this amazing clip of Piers Morgan going head to head with one of my favorite public speakers, George Galloway. Say what you will about that man, but he's eloquent, he is to the point, he is passionate, he's a man of integrity. I respect him. And I wanted to break down this conversational jujitsu session that took place between these two big media players. Let's have a look what they had to say on the Piers Morgan Uncensored show.
Well, joining me now is the host of the mother of all talk shows and former British MP, George Galloway. George, you're listening there to Naftali Bennett. What was your response to that interview?
Well, you did a good job as his Alistair Campbell to him as Tony Blair. I hope he remembers you if he does get into the Prime Minister's seat. I'm frankly astounded that you did not ask him about the bombing of the Iranian state TV station just a couple of hours ago. The mass murder of tea ladies, technicians, journalists and broadcasters. I can't believe that you didn't know about that. And indeed, Professor
Actually, I don't know
Morandi
about that.
was...
You've just told me that, so that's the answer to your question. I didn't know that.
Well,
I've been on air.
Well, you really need to be better briefed.
Well,
You're
okay,
interviewing a guy that you're
you
punting.
can have your views about that.
No, this is
in answer
very
to your
important.
question, I didn't know, so that's the answer to your question.
Well, you should have known.
Okay, well, you're a better journalist than me. You're a better
Professor
broadcaster than me. I didn't know.
Professor Morandi...
Okay, straight off the bat, this is a really bad way to start the conversation. I mean, it's one thing when you disagree with someone's viewpoints, but when you want to say that someone should have known about the fact that something went on, I mean, this is planet Earth. There are over 7 billion people on this planet, and there are many different things that are going on. Granted, if you are someone like myself and you're paying attention to politics, obviously, you know, there are a lot of major things going on right now, like AI and a potential nuclear war between Iran and Israel, but we could have many other figures, many other nations involved. The U.S. seems to be on the verge of getting involved in this, and this could blow out to World War III. There's a lot of important issues that are going on. However, the idea of expecting someone, even a journalist, to be aware of everything that is going on and making an argument that, look, you should have been aware of this and it's a shame, you're not doing your job right. I really don't think it's fair. I think straight off the bat. Also, George Galloway also chastising Piers for playing puppet against the last guest that he had on the show. When, look, I don't agree with Piers Morgan on many of his viewpoints, but sometimes people tend to agree and sometimes people don't think to ask the questions that you probably would want to ask someone. And a lot of the times, if you are an interviewer, you have to realize that if you want to have some kind of rapport, you want to have someone back on your show, you can't be going all out and asking them the kind of questions that are going to put them on the spot, make them look bad. They just won't come on again. Of course, as a viewer, you want to hear all the juicy stuff, but the thing a lot of people don't seem to realize, and this is something I've noticed in the same way that when I watch mixed martial arts fighting competitions, it's easy to say, hey man, you should have fought harder, you should have kicked that guy in the balls. If you were right there and then, you probably wouldn't have done the same kind of stuff because there's obviously repercussions, right? When you're watching an interview and you are not the one that is actually conducting the interview, it's very easy to say you should have pushed harder, you're being a pussy, that kind of stuff. But the reality is sometimes interviewers don't want to push that hard because they're trying to balance pushing but also being somewhat respectful. Otherwise the interview might not go for as long as you wanted it to. There's always a dance to be played, and a lot of people make the argument, how can you call yourself a journalist, how can you call yourself a activist if you're not going to ask the hard questions? Well, you do, but you also want to have a bit of balance and moderation if you were trying to maintain rapport. Not that you have to be maintaining rapport with every person you have a conversation with, but a certain level of civility. So I completely respect that Piers Morgan may not have asked all the questions that he wanted to with the last guest that he had on, but I just think it's a little kind of off the bat unnecessarily aggressive for George Galloway to start off with this whole, look, you should have known more, you should have pushed harder. It's like he wants a fight, but that's George Galloway. Obviously he's not. I get the impression that he's not a fan of Piers Morgan, and straight off the bat, he's come with his fists held up and he wants to go at it.
was in that building. I don't know if he's dead, but the story is that he was in that building to do an interview with you, and I very much hope that that is not true. And I very much hope that he is still alive.
He told me that was true. He told me that he'd been told to leave, but had decided to stay and do the interview, in which all he did was call me a liar, a coward, and a genocide enabler.
So you did know about the bombing of the Iranian TV station?
No, there was no bombing going on when I interviewed him, obviously, or I would have stopped the interview.
Piers, there's mass casualties.
Yes, George.
In the Iranian
you asked me if I
TV
knew
station.
it was going on when I interviewed him. I didn't.
Well, it's a disgrace that you did not know.
Well, I didn't, or I would have
because
stopped.
you might have been able to ask.
If I'd known, I would have stopped.
That's not fair. It's disgraceful, the fact that you didn't know something. When people make these kind of arguments, I'm like, really, we're playing that game? You don't know something that happened literally a few hours ago, so you should be disgraced? Is this the standard that when you were a journalist, that you have to know everything that's going on 24/7 that goes on around the world? I mean, the fact that this is planet Earth, once again, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and the fact that there are many different media sources, sometimes you want to hang back to confirm the information, makes it perfectly understandable that you may not want to go out and say something that just literally happened because it may be misinformation and so forth. Like the idea of George Galloway having a go at Piers Morgan, and there are many things I could go at Piers Morgan for, don't get me started, but for something like that, come on, George. And just so you do not get this twisted, I absolutely love George Galloway. He is one of my favorite political speakers, and I just think what we're seeing here is a little kind of, they're cheap jives.
Of the interview, obviously.
Well, this is going to grow and grow as an issue, Piers. You may very well be in difficulty here.
I won't be in any difficulty at all. Why don't we get on with the interview?
One thing you did know is that Israel has scores, if not hundreds, of nuclear weapons. And you did not mention it. Why is Israel allowed illegally?
Okay, well, I think it's fair to say that he did know that, because everyone knows that, and Israel's not trying to hide that. But the problem I have with this is just because you would ask those questions doesn't mean that Piers Morgan would ask those questions. We all have different interests. Just because you want to, and look, I'm with George Galloway on this. I would be pushing hard if I had an interview with, of course, I would never be in this position, right? I can't see any Israeli news reporter wanting to do an interview with me because I'd be so very much, I wouldn't be saying anything in order to support their regime, at least in regards to what's going on in Gaza. But if I was having an interview with these people, I mean, the idea of other people expecting me to ask questions that they would ask, I mean, you're not psychic. You don't know what other people want to hear. George Galloway is just projecting here, and granted, he wants to know about these things, and he feels as if Piers should be pushing to have these questions answered, because look, let's face it, these are important questions, but I think we all know the answer to them in regards to nuclear weapons. Israel's position is that, well, ultimately, they can be trusted with nuclear weapons, but Iran cannot, because on many occasions they have said that they want to take out the great Satan, Israel. I think most of the Middle East is itching to do that, and that's my awareness. That's my opinion. But Israel's position is that, look, yeah, we have them, but we're obviously holier than thou. We would never abuse them, and we can't ever allow Iran to have these weapons, which is not a good argument. Like the most frustrating thing to me, personally, in regards to this entire situation, is the fact that it seems to be some kind of an argument that you can preemptively attack a country because they're trying to establish nuclear weapons. And look, anyone that has any understanding of politics, military, realizes that nuclear weapons are a serious game changer. There's a good reason why the United States has done so much, the major powers have done so much to restrict other countries from getting a hold of these weapons, because it really changes the game. But realistically, and in a lot of people, I'm going to get a lot of criticism from this. If you actually respect freedoms and so forth, you cannot be making this argument that, well, these countries aren't allowed to have these weapons because they may use them. It's a very difficult thing to accept, but that puts you in the realm of fear. Hey, look, I can't allow you. It's the same kind of argument that people that want to abolish the gun make. You can't have this weapon because you might hurt someone with it. You can't have nuclear weapons because you might blow someone up with it. And the reality is that when these countries get nuclear weapons, the United States leaves them alone. It's a massive deterrent, mutual assured destruction, right? And it's understandable that Iran would want to get nuclear weapons, considering that Israel has been playing bully to so many of these countries for such a long time. And the United States has a track record of trying to dissuade countries from getting these nuclear weapons. And when they don't get the nuclear weapons, essentially they just run over these countries. But as soon as a country like North Korea has these weapons, they know they can't mess with them. And if I was a country, that's kind of a weird idea, right? But if I was thinking along the lines of trying to make my country the best and safest place, it would be in the interest of my country to have some kind of nuclear arsenal in order to keep other people that may wish to do me harm at bay. So it's understandable.
To hold scores, if not hundreds, of nuclear weapons in defiance of the law, uninspected by any agency in Dimona, and reports today from Dimona are that they are currently modernizing their nuclear fleet. Don't you think that would have put in a better perspective this issue of nuclear weapons? The reason I know you know it is because the brave Jewish whistleblower Mordechai Vanunu, who blew the whistle on Israel's nuclear weapons, came first to the Daily Mirror and was betrayed by your enemy and mine, Robert Maxwell, to the Mossad, and then spent 22 years in prison in solitary confinement, and turned up in the courtroom with his jaws wired together like Hannibal Lecter, so he couldn't tell the courtroom what he'd told the Daily Mirror. Finally, the story appeared in Andrew Neil's Sunday Times, but only after Maxwell had betrayed him to the Mossad. So this issue of nuclear weapons, according to Tulsi Gabbard, Iran is not seeking to build a nuclear weapon.
Why would you believe them?
February.
Why would you believe them?
Yeah, I'm inclined to think that at the very least Iran wants to have nuclear weapons. But besides the point, I think he's making a fair argument that ultimately Piers Morgan doesn't have the balls in order to ask the hard questions. And there are plenty of other people that have, and they've suffered horribly because of their willingness to stand against the tyranny that's going on. But here's the thing. This is my attitude. Whereas I always respect people that go out of their way to stand for truth and do things that require tremendous virtue, anytime I see someone that does that, playing this game of, well, look, other people have done this, I've done this, you need to lift the bar, shame on you for not pushing harder, you're a journalist, you should be asking harder questions. I just personally don't think that's the best way to do it. Lead by example. But when you want to take a stab at someone because they're not willing to take the same kind of risk that you are, it's a bad look. And more often than not, when I find people doing this kind of stuff, I find them to be so hypocritical because there's always other people that can take it further. The amount of people I see in the truth movement that often say, oh, these people aren't working hard enough, that these people didn't show enough resistance or whatever it might be, when I, for instance, would be pushing a lot harder than they are in many different regards, right? But I'm not the kind of person to badmouth them and say, hey, man, you should be doing more, because it's such a slippery slope when you make arguments like that. Look at what I've done. I'm doing a lot more. These other people have done a lot more for pushing the truth, standing up against tyranny. You should be doing more. At the very least, call out people that are perpetuating lies. Call out people that are supporting immoral regimes. But the whole idea of virtue signaling by bringing people down, even though they're reporters, and even though I dislike so many of the things that Piers Morgan actually says, and that's a different argument. If you want to attack someone for things they have stood for, positions they have, completely respect that. That's how this game works. But the idea of bringing someone down because they haven't done enough, this game, I maybe this is an ideological thing, but I frown on that kind of behavior, because you just end up being a hypocrite when you do that. And I find a lot of people in every political ideology seem to support this idea. You're not doing enough. I've done a lot more, and there are people that are doing more, so shame on you. No, look, we all have different levels and different abilities, and we should all try to inspire other people to bring themselves up to a higher standard if we are doing something at a high standard, right? If we're pushing truth and we're trying to uplift the vibration of the world. But the idea of condemning people because they're not on your level, I think, is not the best approach to it.
Well, I believe Tulsi Gabbard.
Why do you believe Iran?
No, I'm believing Tulsi
given
Gabbard.
The atomic agency,
I'll come on to Iran.
Given that the atomic agency...
Why do you want to dodge Tulsi Gabbard?
You've talked and talked and talked. Let me get a question in. The atomic agency, as you know, brought out a report in the last few days. It made it clear that Iran had lied, obfuscated, denied access, not allowed enough inspections, and that it now got uranium enriched to 60%, which is a massive stage forward from where they were at 3% a few years ago to now 60%. And the move from that to being able to create a nuclear weapon is actually much closer and therefore more potentially imminent as a threat. And I'm just curious why you would trust Iran as far as you could throw it, the regime, not the people, the regime, when they are clearly accelerating their nuclear program, clearly accelerating their enrichment program.
Piers,
why would you not be concerned about that?
Piers.
Okay, well, here's an area of contention, because, granted, I don't so much contest the fact that Iran is trying to make these nuclear weapons, and let's say that they are at that level. They're at the level where they're on the verge of making nuclear weapons, bearing in mind that Netanyahu has been saying this for many years. I think in 2015 he was saying that Iran was on the verge of these nuclear weapons, and it's kind of like Al Gore saying that we're on the verge of some kind of climate catastrophe. He was saying this during the turn of the last century, right? And look, we're still here. I mean, if someone's gotten it wrong and they're still getting it wrong, I'm inclined to think, well, these guys might not have their money on the ball. But here's the underlying issue that I'd imagine a lot of people are not going to agree me on. But so what if Iran's creating nuclear weapons? It is a very dangerous world. But look, it is my opinion that we're going to reach a point where it's going to become inevitable that many countries do have access to these nuclear weapons. It's crazy to think it's been about 80 years since the Second World War, right? And it's still so difficult for some countries to develop these nuclear weapons because it still requires so much time and energy and resources to create enriched uranium. I think you need plutonium and uranium, and to do all the magic science that you do in order to get at the level where you can actually have a bomb. 80 years later, even with the accelerated growth of technology, making nuclear weapons, these babies of ultimate destruction, is still a very difficult task, right? But at some point, it is going to be inevitable that in the same way that a little kid can use his phone to do things that a few decades ago you'd need the biggest, most powerful computers to do, we're going to reach a point where most people are going to have access to this kind of power, and it's going to be a very dangerous time. Now, there are basically two choices here. We basically suppress everyone's ability to do anything that is destructive, or we allow things to be as they are, and we have the spirit of respect for people living their life in accordance to fairness, and unless, of course, they violate any basic rights, they drop bombs on you or something like that, we don't initiate violence in them. But as soon as we move in this area of, well, they might do this, they might drop these bombs, they might fire on us, we are living in a very difficult moral playing field, because these are the arguments that tyrants will always use. This is what Israel, this is what the United States used in order to go to Iraq. These Iraqis have weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein has these weapons of mass destruction. It was that argument. Then it became they're involved in Al-Qaeda. And whereas these are things that turned out to be nonsense, as most of us knew around the time, I was alive at that time. I actually watched the whole thing. You know, it's kind of showing my age, but it was so blatant to me that these were obfuscated lies. But the thing is, as soon as you make arguments that are in the realm of epistemology that you can't prove and use that to justify going in and obliterating someone, to initiating violence, it's a very tricky thing. You can't make a moral argument like that. Well, I feel like this person might be doing something that's bad. He has the intention of doing something that's bad. This threat argument, like, there is a distinction between a legitimate threat, actually seeing someone we can all see pull out a gun and then say, I'm going to kill you, right? That's a legitimate threat. But to be playing this shady game that most of these disgusting countries do, and I say disgusting countries because these countries that always make these ridiculous arguments in order to justify violence, like, well, you know, they have the technology to make a nuclear weapon, and unless, of course, we drop bombs on them, the world is going to be in a very despicable place. And they always appeal to these potential circumstances, and it's disingenuous, and quite frankly, I don't think it's a justification for that kind of violence. But ultimately, the overarching issue here is that should we be able to bomb the shit out of a country because they may have nuclear weapons? And we live in a world where there are other countries that have these nuclear weapons. Pakistan has these weapons. They've openly said that if Israel drops a nuke on Iran, they'll drop a nuke on them. Of course, the United States has these weapons. Russia has these weapons. France has these weapons. India has these weapons. North Korea has had these weapons for many decades. And you know what? We've left them alone. I think it's fair to say that if North Korea did not have nuclear weapons, yeah, the U.S. would have gone in and dealt with that problem. And look, whereas I look at the things that are going on in North Korea, and I don't respect that. I think the people there absolutely are not on board with it, at least some of them. That's always a tricky thing when you want to intervene in the politics of another country there. But if you are a country and you don't want to be messed around with, it's perfectly understandable that you will have these nuclear weapons as a deterrent. I'm not in this game where we allow fear, we allow the possibility of what might happen to dictate whether or not we violate the sovereign rights of individuals and so forth. And I feel as if most of the political spectrum wants to play this game, that you can justify violence because fundamentally you're scared.
Piers, I trust Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump's director of national intelligence.
You do?
Don't you?
Well,
Don't you?
do? I'm surprised you do.
I'm very much hoping she'll be the next president, Piers. But I trust her. Don't you?
I don't know. I've interviewed.
I do actually. I think for the most part she's a trustworthy person. I'm not. Doesn't mean I'm going to be in line with all her policies, but I really respect her, and I think it would be interesting to see that.
Life. I don't know whether to trust everything she says or not.
Well, you know that Donald Trump appointed her the director of national intelligence. Why would you doubt her?
Isn't
Trump your friend?
I'm not doubting her or trusting her or untrusting her.
Does he appoint liars?
I'm asking you why you trust.
I don't think it's a very good line of questioning. Does he appoint liars or fools? I mean, so yeah, potentially, yeah. Trump's appointed the wrong people before. He's openly said that, and I presume he's learned from it now. I actually like the people that he's appointed, but it's perfectly possible for someone to wrongfully appoint someone. I think he's making the argument here that obviously Trump, and this is someone you like, wouldn't appoint someone that is not trustworthy, and I think that's not a very good argument. Maybe he's scrambling to make good arguments here. He's on the fly, but whereas I love George Galloway's ability to make flowery, beautiful statements as a public speaker, he's absolutely brilliant. These political arguments right now, I think they're just testament to the fact that he very much does not like Piers Morgan and feels very passionately against what is going on, like many of us do in the Middle East. And he is trying to have the unpopular, well, I wouldn't say it's unpopular, but the truth that so many of us are aware of, right? The elephant in the room exposed. And I think he feels, and I agree with him, that Piers Morgan does not want to have this truth aired out, or at least on some unconscious bias level, he is not aware of this truth, and that's why he's attacking Piers the way that he is.
The Iranian regime when they say they're not wanting to build a nuclear bomb?
Well, you're actually asking the wrong person for this reason. If I was running Iran, I would long ago have had a nuclear weapon because Israel has scores or hundreds of them. And as you've just heard, is determined to bring about regime change in Iran. So you won't get me to clutch my pearls about Iran having nuclear weapons.
Why wouldn't you want why wouldn't
everybody.
you want regime change in Iran out of interest, given what a draconian, repressive, despicable regime it is?
I could say the same thing about the United States. For all the things that we accuse the Iranians of doing, the United States has done tenfold. I mean, look, where our shit is better than yours thing doesn't really work.
I have this old-fashioned view. You once had it also in relation to the country next door, Iraq, that the leadership in any country is the business of the people in that country. But if you've got a nuclear-armed superpower trying to change your regime, frankly, you're an idiot if you don't arm yourself to the maximum that you are capable of.
So you want to see Iran arming itself with nuclear weapons?
Yes.
Well, Israel's got hundreds.
No, I'm asking you about Iran.
You've just been talking about the slaughter of the innocent.
I'm asking you about Iran.
In Gaza. Well,
and look, this is a fair question. It's supposed to be some kind of like, how you think Iran should have nuclear weapons? Look, I don't think Iran should use nuclear weapons. I don't think any country should use these nuclear weapons. But as a deterrent, the sheer fact that from the perspective of, if my neighbors that are not good people in my opinion and want me dead have guns, then I think I should have guns. Now, I don't have guns, and I don't really want to. I actually prefer to live in a country where, I mean, look, I absolutely respect people's ability to have guns, but the fact that I just don't have them, don't know how to use them, it's a lot of work if I'd have to get guns and have to like learn how to use them and all that kind of stuff. So I'd much rather not have guns, at least right now. But if my neighbors had them, absolutely I'd want to have guns. And you know what? The fact that police officers have them as well, yeah, I'd want to have guns. And that's the situation that most of us are in. It's like, well, if these people have guns, I also want to have guns. I want to have the right to protect myself. The same logic applies with nuclear weapons. But people get so emotionally caught up in like, but they could, what if they detonate? What if they, yeah. However, look, I got to be logically consistent over here. What makes it acceptable for you to have them and not for me to have them? Because you're a better person? Well, I don't think you're a better person. I don't think Israel is a better country than Iran. And I know this might be unpopular amongst a lot of people within the West with conservative worldview, but I'd actually make the argument most people agree with me around the world. If you have a look at the behavior of Israel as a nation just over the last maybe few years, and have a look at Iran, yeah, they talk, they say a lot of horrible things, they got terrorists and all that kind of stuff, but most of these major countries are guilty, if not in far greater scale, of doing many of the things that the Iranians do. Some countries are more clandestine about it, like the Chinese. Some countries are more covert about it, like the Americans, but we all know they do it. But they just try to project this idea that our shit is better than yours, but many of these countries do it. All I'm saying is that I think I have a right to protect myself in the event that a country wants to blow my country up. So yeah, I'm not opposed to Iran having nuclear weapons. I just don't think that you should ever be able to use them, because realistically, in the same way that Israel is launching this concentrated airstrike in Gaza, saying that they're trying to take out Hamas, right, by killing thousands upon thousands of innocent babies, it's virtually impossible to use nuclear weapons and take out only military targets. I don't think it's possible. And just being philosophically consistent, if you use these weapons and you kill innocent people, then you should suffer the consequences of that. But a lot of people don't seem to be able to make this argument both ways. But I absolutely respect the idea of people at least having these weapons as a deterrent, because hey look, these other countries around you are quite willing to threat you with their use. So you should be able to threat them back with a use as a retaliation.
Would you, George Galloway, it sounds to me like you, George Galloway, unlike the rest of the world, would like to see Iran arming itself with nuclear weapons, to which I say you've lost your marbles.
Piers, there you go again. Unlike the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Do you really think that you speak for the rest of the world?
Beam's creatine is American. Beam Doc M. Boko Piers. Pakistan.
Listen,
right? But
Iran
actually, yes,
is
most of the world has a real problem with the concept of Iran being a nuclear power, apart from you, who thinks they should have loads of nukes.
No, it's not just for me. Iran is presently the hero of the vast majority of people in the world.
Oh, rubbish.
I actually very much agree with that sentiment. You know, I've been looking at what's been going on with Israel right now, and it's so fucked up. Anytime you see innocent civilians suffering, because there are a lot of, let's face it, now you can make the argument that a lot of the people in Israel are in support of what's going on, they deserve it. I don't fall into that kind of stuff. I separate the Israeli government from the Hamas or the Iranian regime. If I look at the people that have suffered due to these bombings, horrible. I don't think it's ever justified. But let's face it, Israel as a state, Israel as a government, if we're looking at this subjectively speaking, considering what they've done to Palestine, the Gaza, just over the last year or so, and how they've been going around dropping bombs in all these other countries, like the United States, which I think is probably worse if we're going to look at this objectively, in terms of the amount of harm they've done, they are absolutely deserving of the retaliatory response that they've received from Iran in terms of the state, not the people. I don't think it's ever justified to kill innocent people. But yeah, man, that's why a lot of people right now are looking at and all of social media is lit up with this. The general sentiment, anyone on TikTok, anyone on all social media, I find, is, Israel Iran has a right to defend itself, right? Which is what you were hearing from Israel. I was like, and the overwhelming sentiment I find on the interwebs is that people are, if not openly saying that they're happy with this, they're quietly smiling. And this is generally what you see, the theme you see amongst all the comments. And quite frankly, that's also on some level how I feel, purely because Israel as a state in terms of, as a government, has been so irresponsible in its obliteration of the thousands of kids, the many innocent people that have been slaughtered just in Gaza, and recklessly in Iran as well. And you know, they always make this argument, we're going after strategic targets, but your smart bombs and your strategic targeting that's supposed to be 99.9% effective ends up to be 1% effective for all means and purposes. And I just don't support that. And I think my only response is karma's a bitch. Seeing that kind of stuff. I don't think my heart goes out to any innocents that die, but let's have a look at, God damn it. It's like seeing a bully that's all constantly picking on people finally have some guy beat the shit out of him, right? Actually, I think it's a little different because they're innocent people involved here, and let's say they're innocent people that are getting hurt because of it. Yeah, it's fucked up, man. The innocent people getting hurt, but you're kind of happy that the bully has been taken down, right? And that's how anyone that is being honest about what is generally happening on social media realizes that is the general sentiment, I would say. Of course, it's very subjective, but people around the world. Granted, it varies from country to country, but considering that the Western sentiment is something that we seem to be so influenced by, and I find people have this attitude that the West represents the world. The West does not statistically represent the world. If you have a look at the world in terms of statistics, proportions, you find China, Russia, the Islamic nations, so forth. There are so many more people that are not in favor of Israel and what Saddam Hussein referred to as the Great Satan, the United States of America. And anyone that knows anything about me realizes that I am pro the ideas of freedom and liberty that really took foundation in the United States of America. I'm deeply into the origins of the United States. The fact that this country was the light of freedom for quite some time. But if we have a look at the recent years, the last few hundred years, and have a look at who has been proliferating the most amount of mayhem and destruction, it is the empire of the United States. And I think if you were denying that, you were so overcome by this bias that you have to be pro-American because you are an American, that you cannot see the fact that America is responsible for so much pain around the world because of its bombing campaigns. And as much good as it does do, it's also responsible for a tremendous amount of misery. And you can make the argument that it's disproportionately in the negative in terms of the harm that it's caused around the world with its bombs and so forth.
And it's the
Absolute
fact
rubbish.
that you can't see
What a
that.
load of absolute
Piers,
nonsense.
take your eyes off the posterior
Absolute
of the
nonsense.
tiny part of the
Nonsense.
world, which is the Western world.
You think that
Africa
currently
is with
most
Iran.
of the world, you think the rest of the
Latin
world is...
America is with Iran.
You think the rest of the world is...
China is with Iran.
Yeah, who?
Russia is with Iran.
Russia,
All the
China-
Arabs are with Iran.
Russia, China,
Take
any
your
other...
nose out of the ass
North Korea?
of the tiny number of people that you think are the world. They're not the world. The world is 8 billion people.
Right.
You're speaking
8 billion
for
now.
the little clique that leads a tiny fraction of fewer than 1 billion of the people
So
of the
just to
world.
be...
I love this. Piers realizes that George has him there, because the reality is that these countries, like, ostensibly, right, are in support of Iran, right? So it's like the argument that, oh, look, the most of the world is in favor of Israel. I mean, let's be honest. At least it's a very contentious issue, right?
clear,
You
just to be clear,
cannot see
as I
beyond the
suggested,
end of your nose.
as I suggested, then you want to put up as a defence for Iran that they're supported by China, Russia. Did you mention North Korea?
Oh man, we're making that argument now. This is what I love about Piers Morgan. The kind of arguments that he makes are so philosophically infantile. It's like, well, yes, I made the argument initially that most of the world is in favor of the West. Well, now you've kind of shown me that that's not really the case. Now I'll make the argument. Well, it's kind of like it's like a preschool chess move. Well, the people that support those countries, they're bad people. Yeah, they're bad. Russia's bad. China's bad. North Korea's bad. Okay, what about the countries that are in support of Israel? You don't think these countries are bad? Like this is the insanity of it. Piers is making the argument that, oh really, our shit don't stink. Great Britain, United States. Well, we only do good things. We only drop bombs on countries that have done bad things, and we never make any mistakes. Yeah, we went after we killed millions of people, millions of innocent civilians died due to the concentrated airstrikes on Iraq and all the other over 100 countries that we bombed in the last 100 years. But as a country that champions freedom, America's a good country, Israel's a good country. They only do good things, even though they've killed so many innocent thousands and thousands of people. Well, they're a good I mean, what do you oh my god, it's such a demented argument.
Oh yeah, but are they the kind of people, in terms of their own regimes, that we should be taking as good supporters of these benevolent people
You're
in
living
Tehran?
under Piers.
But I think this is why Uncensored is such a fun show to watch, because it's not that, I mean, Piers, like George Galloway, is such an eloquent speaker, but his ability to make cogent arguments are so bad. That's just my honest opinion. And granted, he always presents this, I'm impartial attitude. I just think his moral code is just so stuffed up. His stance on the Gulf War, from what I understand, his stance on the forced vaccinations and so forth, his stance on even the whole Israel-Palestine thing, even though it's changed over the last few months, I just think they're abominable. He always has this very subjectivist, moral relativistic outlook where it's like, well, we got to be proportional. I think it's okay for Israel to go and obliterate Gaza because, it's self-defense, even though there are thousands and thousands of babies dying and so forth. And, well, it's proportional enough to force a whole bunch of people to be forcibly inoculated against their will, or at least just coerced into taking all this stuff, because, well, they're exposing my children to problems. And so, I mean, Piers is someone that is so fun to listen to because his arguments get you either wilded up, or at least me. I find his arguments to be so infantile, but so articulate and expressed with such passion that it makes always an enjoyable conversation. And I think these kind of interactions are amongst my most enjoyed clips to break down, because both these characters are such eloquent speakers. They have been in the game for such a long time, and they speak passionately. But I just find sometimes they're not really making good arguments. They're just going after each other. They're just making their arguments for the sake of making arguments, and they're not arguing in good faith. I think that's what I wanted to say. I feel like they're arguing in bad faith a lot of the times.
Starmer's regime, for God's sake. You're going to blame the British for Keir Starmer? The French are living under little Macron. When did you get the right to decide that 7/8 of the world's population cannot be considered valid because you, Piers Morgan, don't like their regimes?
Oh, that's really... When did you get the right to think that 7/8 of the world's population don't have their opinions legitimate because you don't think that... It's just so... I love listening to George Galloway, but he makes a salient point. I mean, really? And I think if Piers is being honest with himself, he realizes that he made a dumb argument. Let's see how he responds.
There's something else you didn't mention, and you must also have known about that. Unless you switch your mobile off at 10 o'clock at night, you already know that Iran is giving Israel a bloody good hiding every single night.
It's not though, is it?
Described it all.
It's not though, is
you
it?
described.
It's all over TikTok. And look, granted, you can't see the full scale of everything that's happened, but I've seen videos. And look, guys, people that want to make the argument, oh, you can't trust anything that's on the news. Oh, you can't trust anything that's on social media. Look, if you're a flat earth conspiracy theorist that doesn't believe anything that you see, this conversation is not going to have any sway with you. But it is understandably very clear to anyone that is on TikTok that the aftermath in terms of buildings, destruction, things that we can actually see, independent people all around the world posting videos, and you can cross-reference the images and so forth. Israel has been very hard hit. Now, I think when this conversation took place, it had just been a couple of hours, right? So even then, I guess, a lot of damage. But over the last, it's now been several days, and it is well understood that the amount of damage that has been done. Now, granted, this is very subjective. There's some people that make the argument that what's happened with Gaza just over the last year, it's not that bad. It's not genocide. The entire area is just littered with. I've never seen anything as bad as that. I haven't seen pictures in terms of the destruction that bad since Second World War. This is epic proportions, but there's still people that make the argument it's not that bad. So look, when it comes to that game, I'm not even going to try, but I think anyone that is being honest with themselves, if you have a look at the footage in regards to how Israel has been completely decimated, it realizes that there's been some serious damage that has taken place to Israel, and all I can say is karma's a bitch.
It's not though. As a wonderful military operation.
As always, let me answer you. As always, the Iranian regime has put out apocalyptic statements about this will be the annihilation of Israel and everything. It's like it did the last time. And you know what happened last time? Nothing. They fired a few rockets, Piers, and the dome dealt with it.
That kind of argument. Well, because they did this last time, because they exaggerate their claims, or they're speaking about, anytime someone speaks about what they're going to do and so forth, that's always an opinion. And it's a logical fail when someone takes an opinion as fact. It's like, we're going to decimate them, we're going to make them pay for what they've done, blah, 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 blah. That's 100% an opinion, even if it comes to fruition. I don't know what happened last time, but if they were making claims about what they were going to do, that's irrelevant. Even if they said it was going to happen, that was their opinion. If they're speaking about what was actually done, the amount of damage, and exaggerating that, like a lot of I find Israel, the spokespeople do in regards to the Gaza Strip, that the death toll hasn't been bad. We killed so much of Hamas, and not many innocent people have died. You can make that argument, right? But I think that's just how people speak when they're in the media or on either side. They speak with this lens of bias. But I think if we're being, and this is very subjective, they're being impartial. I think it's clear to understand that people try to sell you something, but there is an objective element of truth that you can always see by the fruits of their labor. And anyone that has a look at what's happened to Palestine over the last year or so realizes that a lot of people have died, and there's been tremendous destruction that's taken place. Anyone that has a look at Israel just over the last week realizes that there has been a lot of damage that has been done to Israel, and you can try to spin that as what you would like to spin it as, but regardless of what anyone says, the proof is in the pudding. I think that addresses the point.
This time they've got a few missiles have got through the dome. But the idea, hang on, let me finish my question.
In fairness, this was only a couple of hours after the bombing started. So look, based on what Piers is reporting, I mean, that's, I guess, somewhat fair enough. And like he said, he was uninformed about it. But this is another thing I hate about Piers Morgan. He always says, I mean, granted, look, you're uninformed about things, but the kind of arguments that he makes, despite the fact that he's so misinformed, are still absolutely objectionable. You know, like the idea of saying that, I mean, I guess this just comes down to my moral stance, my worldview, that what Israel has been doing for the last, I don't know how long, to Palestine. It was only just recently when he changed his tune that it was proportionate, right? Because it hadn't reached this threshold where in his eyes it's like horrible enough. I think anytime you are dropping bombs on a group of people or any area full of kids is unacceptable. I think anytime you're targeting hospitals and saying, well, this is where Hamas is unacceptable. I mean, for something to get to the point where someone has done something so many times and it's reached a scale that is so proportionately bad that you finally say that it was wrong, that just does not hit the mark for me. And I feel as if, I know this is what Piers does with a lot of the stances that he takes on things.
The idea that the Israeli Air Force have managed to inflict this kind of catastrophic damage on military commanders, nuclear scientists, nuclear sites, and all of this, and have control of the airwaves in Tehran. And the only response so far has been a few missiles that have got past the dome.
Missiles?
You say they've been pounding them. They've not been pounding Israel.
Have you seen Haifa?
No, he has not, George Galloway. He told you he hadn't seen half of that shit, but he's still commenting on it, isn't he? Based on the ignorance that he has right now, that's what he's inclined to say. So look, let him have it.
They've not been pounding Israel.
You are astounded. This is something else you don't know. You didn't know about Morandi. You didn't know about the TV station.
I knew what Morandi told me. I knew what Morandi told me.
Israel.
I knew what Professor Morandi told me. Just to be clear.
Hang on. You don't know about it.
Just to be
I'll
clear.
tell you who I believe.
Just to be
You're
clear.
asking about belief.
Just to be clear.
I believe the mayor of Tel Aviv.
Sorry, if I may finish responding to you.
Can I quote an Israeli? I believe the mayor of Tel Aviv, a former director of intelligence in the Israeli army, now the elected mayor of Tel Aviv, who says this has got to stop. We cannot win this war. That's the mayor of Tel Aviv. I can believe him.
I see
or I
zero evidence.
Morgan.
There is
okay, clearly George Galloway is getting very heated over this. But I think it's understandable because here's the thing. There's a war going on right now. It's very easy for us to be in our homes. Hey man, this stuff doesn't concern me. And I see a lot of people take this kind of stuff, and I am as well. I mean, I'm like, whereas consciously I realize how horrible it is. I can speak about how horrible it is. Until you actually experience it for yourself, you don't really feel that pain. When someone is so close to this kind of stuff, and I presume George Galloway is, he's very much immersed in this, you see how horrible it is. And not to justify him in speaking in a very disrespectful way to Piers or anyone for that matter, it comes through. It comes through in the way in which he's trying to hold Piers to account, because he's clearly very dissatisfied with the fact that Piers has not been saying certain things. And I think that's the crux of George Galloway's arguments here, because there are very few little things that he's claiming, right, that he has issue with Piers over, other than the fact that he's ignorant in regards to what's happened over the last few hours, and the fact that he hasn't spoken up about certain things which he thinks are important. And we all have different things, different values and ideas that we want to have brought to our attention. I mean, that's the realm of politics, but sometimes people have different things that are at their forefront, right? But I think that George should have been focusing on calling out Piers for the things that he'd actually gotten wrong, the things that he's done which he doesn't support, if you want to have a go at someone. But actually, the better, more enlightened approach is to actually talk about how you can address this thing. Try to address who really is to blame over here, and then also address how to actually to best galvanize the community, if that's even possible, rather than oh, I don't like you because you didn't speak about something I'm concerned about, and you're ignorant. You don't know enough about shit that happened. Like, we're not even really talking about real history here. We're talking about the last few hours. No one on this planet knows everything that was going on in the last few hours on any kind of massive media scale. I mean, unless you're glued 24/7 to a news source, and then you can't rely on a lot of the news as well. You got to obviously cross-reference, verify the information. So I just don't think it's fair. As much as I do love you, George Galloway, and I would definitely be going at Piers, rightfully so, I just think there are better ways of attacking him and actually maintaining your civility, or at least not coming across as acting in bad faith here.
Zero evidence that Israel can't win this war as things stand. Zero.
Well, why
Most
are
of
they
it,
asking the United
90%
States
of the
to join
damage
in?
is being inflicted by Israel onto
This
Iran.
is pure nonsense, Piers. Why are
you so
begging
deluded,
Donald
George?
Trump?
Okay, and now Piers Morgan is clapping back. It's like, and when you make opinions and put them across as fact, like there's no way that Iran could win this. And look, realistically, I don't think Iran's going to win, but how are you defining winning? I mean, cause Israel a lot of damage? Absolutely, but it's not impossible. It's not outside the realm of possibility. Like, what are we talking about here? If Iran does get nuclear weapons, well, even if that happens, I mean, let's say they are used, that's never going to end well for anyone. But the point is that even that whole line of argumentation, it's impossible for one country to win a war, blah, 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 blah. That's just so speculative. There's no point in making claims like that because there's things that you cannot prove until they happen. But I think it's clear now that this is going to the realm of we're just going to take stabs at each other and demean each other because we don't agree with each other's opinion, which is where any kind of conversation devolves, when you start attacking people for just the fact that you don't like them. And this is the kind of argument this is. It's like, well, you're an idiot if you have an opinion that's different in terms of what's going to happen in the future. I mean, come on, man. I mean, none of us have clairvoyance here with absolute definitive certitude. I mean, it doesn't work that way. The future is unknown.
Why is your
Trump to join in?
pathological hatred of all things Israel made you so deluded?
Is this something else you don't know? Do you know that Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon are right this minute on TV debating how, if Trump gives in to Netanyahu's begging him to join in and save the day, that it will be the end of the Trump presidency? That it will split MAGA down the middle? Do you not know that either?
That's actually very interesting, but it's immaterial to at least attacking Piers Morgan, because look, did you know right now that I was making this podcast talking about I mean, look, come on man, but it is interesting. And look, I guess there's an art to debating. Sometimes it's all about theatrics, doing things. There are a lot of things I could do to make myself sound more interesting, make myself more appealing and so forth, and maybe draw a lot more people, say things that are highly contentious or offensive. But if you're trying to maintain your integrity, it's hard to do that when you're making these kind of arguments. Because, look, man, I mean, so what? How's that even relevant? I mean, I'm sure if you are listening to this, you're hearing these arguments, and you must be, if you were a sane person, thinking, so what? So what if Piers Morgan didn't know that there was a conversation that was taking place between Tucker and blah, blah, blah? Who cares if you don't agree that Iran can't win this war? I mean, these are irrelevant. But these are the kind of arguments that these guys have fallen into because they have such hatred of each other, seemingly.
No, why would I know that? I've been on air. How would I know that?
Well, if you're really...
Why do you expect me to know things when I'm literally interviewing people like you?
I made the mistake, Piers, of thinking you were a well-informed man.
I am, but when I'm actually filming my show...
George, come on, man. And look, I try to sympathize with him because I could be just as pissed off as Piers as well. And I make the argument, maybe it's just really hard to attack someone when you're in a fair way when you're so angry at them. Because you got to realize also, anytime you speak to someone, it's not just the conversation that you were having in the moment, and your arguments are based off of who they are in that moment. There is a history that these two people have had, no doubt. I don't know it, but I am very, very confident they have a history. They've interchanged worldviews. They've spoken many times. They have such hatred of each other. They've both done things to each other that have rubbed each other the wrong way, or have said certain things that have created this idea of who they are in each. Well, definitely, I'd argue in George Galloway's mind that now when he's making these arguments, they're fueled by the history of what that person has done. All the many different things that they've done, that's fueled him in making the arguments. Because there's no way you would make an argument like that to someone that you just met and you had some kind of basic level of respect for. These are not fair arguments. These are the kind of arguments, as soon as someone starts making these arguments to me, I'm immediately in the, okay, we don't respect each other anymore. We're not actually friends category. And that's all it takes from me. You make one of these kind of arguments to me and I'm like, okay, I'll give it to you if you're very angry, you're emotionally caught up justifiably, you've lost someone, I've done something to you in the past that's wronged you the wrong way. But you can't be in good faith with someone and make arguments like this without coming across as a jackass. And I think George Galloway, if he looked at this video for what it was, and I think if Piers looked at it for what it was, they'd realize that they were both having a go at each other. They're just retaliating. They're speaking from a place of ego where they're trying to defend themselves. I've been in that space as well. I try to take a step back, keep my ego in check anytime I'm caught up in this environment, and I try to go silent, and then I end up regretting not being vitriolic towards them. But I find it's always better for my integrity to do that than just blasting out horrible shit that's just illogical and then trying to apologize for it, because you can't undo words. As soon as you say something like this, not only does it affect your reputation, but it affects your relationship with that person, and affects, more importantly, your self-worth. Now you have to own the fact that you've said something that was out of line. And you can't really, you can apologize for things, but unfortunately when you say something, you feel the way that you do, it has been imprinted in this etheric reality that we immersed in, and that is tangible. I mean, it's done. And you really have to find a way of speaking from a place of truth and also integrity when you come on these shows. And it's very hard to do that when there is such emotions at play, understandably. I also want to say that I also think it's very unreal for people to act as if they're just emotionally dead. Like, I've heard some people pretend that, and look, I know it's very easy to not care about this kind of stuff, but I think that the people that are most being real, even though they're not expressing themselves with integrity and so forth, but at least emotionally they're being most real, are the people that are actually emotionally charged about this stuff that goes on. Because this stuff is not something that is light. We're dealing with pain, anger, suffering here. I'm not one of these new age hippies that thinks this is all some part of some beautiful planet, it's all magic and beautiful. People are suffering here, and it's not good. It's unpleasant. It's unnecessary. And I don't buy into this biblical worldview that it's all has been pre-written. Israel is the land, these are the chosen people, and whatever happens is supposed to happen either. There are horrible things that are taking place in the world right now, and I think the right response is to speak with emotional content, to charge your voice with adulation when you speak truth to power, but also to find a way of doing this that maintains your integrity, to keep your ego in check. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I think these two characters have been very interesting to listen to. I'm going to finish up on what they finally had to say, I guess, since it's only a few more minutes to play.
It's quite hard to keep up with world events.
Don't you have someone that can pass you a note?
I've got lots of people that do a brilliant job. That's why I have one of the most popular shows in the world.
Your ear?
Yeah, it's why my show's a lot more popular than yours, because I'm better at it than you. So stop the lectures about how good a journalist I am, or how good a broadcaster I am, or how good my team are, because if you were so good, George, you'd have a lot more people following you, a lot more people watching you. But most people think you become a delusional loon, and I think that's sad.
My dad is bigger than your dad.
Not my dad, just the number of people that watch my show massively dwarfs yours.
My dick is bigger than your dick. Are you really down to that, Piers? Well, I've got some evidence that it isn't, but I'll not go there, because I'm actually astounded at the sheer ignorance, which I'm being very kind and calling it ignorance. I could easily call it lying. I could easily call it willful ignorance.
Of course you could.
That you didn't know there's tea ladies lying dead in the Iranian TV station.
To be clear,
and you interviewed Bennett and didn't even mention it to him.
To be clear, I'm being told by my team in my ear as we speak that outside of Iran, there has been no independent verification of what you are saying. So
It's
you are
on
believing.
television,
So you
Piers.
are believing the
It's
words
on
of the
television.
Iranian
Open your phone.
regime. And
You
forgive
can
me.
see the
And
video.
forgive me if I will wait for independent corroboration before believing what the Iranian regime
You
says.
don't believe. You don't believe that
are an
Professor
Iranian
Morandi.
regime stooge
You don't believe
who believes
that
anything
Professor
they say.
Morandi, your frequent guest, that gentleman,
Yeah.
was
He's not a
bombed
gentleman.
I love that.
He's
He's not a
gentleman.
gentleman.
Oh. I think most of the people who've ever watched him think he's a gentleman.
No, I don't think he's a gentleman.
lying.
I think he's a very disingenuous man who
They
spews a lot
don't
of bullshit.
think he's
actually.
lying, Piers. They don't think he's lying.
Oh, they do,
When
George. They do.
he's-
They do.
They think he's lying when he says he was bombed in the Iranian TV station
He
today.
wasn't bombed. He was on
There's
air talking to
footage.
me. What are you talking about?
There's footage
How was he bombed
on
and
every
talking to me?
media platform.
He was talking to
of
me.
the TV station
How on
burning.
earth was he being bombed
Anyway,
as he
listen,
talked to
Piers.
me? Complete
Piers.
nonsense, man.
Piers,
You're talking
as
nonsense.
your dick is so much bigger than my dick, as your dad is so much bigger than my dad, and as your television program is so much bigger and better than mine,
Yeah.
I'll say goodnight to you because I have rather more wholesome people.
Oh, you're running
to
away.
talk to.
Okay.
No, I'm not running
You're
away,
running
but
away.
I won't be coming back.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I made the mistake of thinking that you were an honest man.
Yeah.
In fact, you're a slippery.
Well, it's okay, because I never made that mistake with you.
You're
So don't worry about it. I never made that mistake with you, George. I always thought you were thoroughly disingenuous and you prop up these evil regimes for reasons that completely baffle me. And you think you're
Is that
the
why
right
you- is
guy.
that why
You think
every
you're the
single
honest
week-
guy. And actually,
Is
you
that
know what?
why every
You're the
week you
kind of
ask
guy
me
that
onto your
one
show,
minute you
Piers?
call me a rat, the next minute I'm your hero and you're praising me. It's
Yeah.
like, it's pathetic.
Is that why you ask
Pathetic,
me onto your show
disingenuous
every
crap.
single week, Piers?
Sorry?
Every single week, I've got the texts.
What's that?
Every single week you ask me onto your show because I'm all these things you just accuse me of.
No, I don't mind having you on to challenge you, no problem.
Every week.
No
You ask
problem.
me every week.
You came on, I think you apparently
You
last
ask me
we last
every
asked
week.
you on
I've
6
got the
weeks ago.
text.
Why are you lying? We haven't
I've
asked you on
got
for
the
6
text.
weeks.
You asked
haven't
me
asked
to
you on
come
for 6
on
weeks.
every single
3rd
week.
of May we asked you last time. 3rd of May, you're lying.
Your dick may be bigger
You're
than
lying,
mine.
George.
Your
3rd
dick
of May.
may be bigger than
3rd of
mine.
May.
Your show
Six
may
and a half,
be bigger
7
than
weeks
mine.
ago.
But I'll tell you what, Piers, you're a busted flush.
What did you,
You know
call?
what, George?
You're a busted flush. I love the way that George Galloway speaks. He's got all these words and phrases that I'm just not familiar with. I think it's a British thing. You're a busted flush. Does anyone want to tell me what that is? But that interchange was 100% go when it came to conversational jujitsu play, just ways of trying to get under someone's skin, just theatrics. But in terms of content, in terms of integrity, guys, that's not very good. I've known George Galloway to actually speak with integrity, but I think sometimes people are just bad matches. When it comes to conversational jiu-jitsu, just like in mixed martial arts, there are some people that may be amazing fighters. When you put them together and they fight, it just ends up being a really bad fight. Bad to watch, right? And I think this is what happened here. This was a very entertaining fight for someone like myself that appreciates the art of insults, the art of just speaking out of your ass and trying to bring someone down. But if you actually wanted an intellectual discourse that was both coming from a place of truth, integrity, and nuance, this was not the best interplay that took place. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, let us know what you think in the comments below. Peace out. Keep it real. Don't drive in text. Peace in the Middle East. Damn, do we need some peace in the Middle East. Pray to all the victims of these mass bombings on either side. And remember, there are 3 things that cannot remain hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the wisdomatic truth bombs of yours truly, the chocolate Nubian soul brother. And yeah, be sure to check out my music. I got a single coming out Friday, the 27th of June. It's called Can't Live Without You. Check that out. Peace.
I don't